let's return to the top of page 1 in the section 3.1 notes just to discuss some terminology you will hear throughout this chapter. All right, first bullet point. If you borrow a sum of money, P, from a lender, or if you deposit a sum of money, P, in a savings account, then P is referred to as the principal. Okay, so if you hear this word principal, all that's referring to is the amount of money that you've borrowed if you're making a loan, or it's the amount of money you're putting in the bank if you're creating a savings account. Okay, so that's what the principal is. Okay, and we use the letter P to denote that. All right, so then when money is borrowed, whether it is a savings institution borrowing from you, or when you deposit money in your account, or you borrowing from a lender, a fee is charged for the money borrowed. This fee is rent paid for the use of another's money, just as rent is paid for the use of another's house. The fee is called interest, okay? I'm sure we are all familiar with interest, okay? Interest is the reason that we don't take all our money and stick it, cash in a shoebox and hide it under our bed, okay? There is some advantage to taking your money and sticking it in a savings account because your money is going to earn interest, okay? It's not a lot of interest these days, but it earns something, okay? Also, if you have something like a student loan, okay? If you borrow, $5,000 for school purposes for a certain amount of time, when it comes time to pay that loan back, you don't pay just the $5,000 back. You have to pay the $5,000 plus any interest that accumulated over the time in which you had the money, okay? So we all should have a handling, just from our own experiences as to what interest means, okay? All right, next bullet. Interest is usually computed as a percentage called the interest rate of the principal over a given period of time. The interest rate, unless otherwise stated, is an annual rate, okay? So interest rate, okay, again, this is something we're all probably familiar with. If you make a loan, they're going to usually tell you the interest rate. You might be making a car loan and borrowing money at a 4.25% interest rate. Or, if you're saving money in a bank, in a savings account, you might get like a, 0.5% interest rate. It's not very high for savings accounts, but there's some percentage of your money that's being computed to calculate the interest, okay? The whole part about the annual rate, the part that's underlined right here, okay, that is true. When you do these problems, they may mention in the problem that the interest rate is an annual rate. Do not think hard about that at all, okay? The interest rate will more than likely always be stated as an annual rate, but there is nothing you need to do with that information. So just kind of ignore that. Keep it in the back of your mind that it is an annual rate, but there's nothing you need to do in regards to that, okay? Finally, the last word you might hear a lot is the term of a loan or an investment meaning savings account or something like that. It's the amount of time the money is borrowed or invested, okay? So that's what that means. So that's just some of the wording you will hear, okay, throughout the chapter, not just for simple interest. Okay, so now we're going to start talking about simple interest. Like I said, 3.1 is probably the easiest of all 4 sections in chapter 3. Most of the time when we're looking at simple interest, it will be from the perspective of making a loan. You make a simple interest loan. There could be, or there can be, simple interest savings accounts, but more than likely, if you're dealing with the context of simple interest, it's going to be a simple interest loan. So if you flip to the next page, okay, we've already covered example 3. Okay, so we're going to jump to the formulas for simple interest. Okay, so there's a couple of formulas. There's 3 formulas. These 2 at the bottom are equivalent, so really you only need to know one or the other. These are the formulas associated with simple interest. So let's go ahead and read about it. It says, with a simple interest loan, the interest is calculated as a fixed percentage of the principal and is paid at the end of the term, which is time. So number one, the first formula tells you how to calculate the interest. So if you went out and made a simple interest loan, this formula is going to tell you how to calculate the interest on that loan, okay? So interest due on a simple interest loan. The interest I on a loan of P dollars at simple annual interest rate R, which has to be in decimal form, for T years is I equals PRT, okay? So pretty straightforward formula, okay? For simple interest only, this is how you calculate interest, okay? You take the principal times the rate times the time, and that will give you the interest, okay? Remember, R is the interest rate. It has to be in decimal form when you plug into this formula. T has to be measured in years. That's why we talked about the conversion factors, okay? Has to be in years. All right, so that will give you the interest, okay? Then, okay, the second formula talks about the total amount due on a simple interest rate loan. Okay, so what total amount due is, remember we were talking about maybe you had a student loan and you borrowed $5,000, and I said, you know, when it comes time to pay back the loan, you're not going to pay just the $5,000 back, you're going to pay the $5,000 plus any interest, okay? So total amount due is going to calculate these two formulas, which are equivalent. They're going to calculate how much you pay back. So that is going to be principal plus interest. Okay. So number two, total amount due on a simple interest loan. Suppose a simple interest loan is made. When the money is paid back, the amount of money that was borrowed as well as the interest is paid back. Therefore, the total amount A due at the end of a loan of P dollars at simple annual interest rate R in decimal form for T years is given by these two formulas. Okay, so like I said, they are equivalent. You pick the one that you like using the best. It doesn't matter. You should get the same answer. All right, so let me show you a little really quick where these are coming from. Okay, so for our purposes here, if you're trying to figure out how much you need to pay back, that's going to be the A variable, okay? You're going to pay back the principal, so how much you borrowed, plus the interest, okay? So the principal is represented by P, okay? That's how much money you borrowed. And then interest is I, okay? And we know from earlier, from this formula, that I is the same thing as PRT, okay? So we can go ahead and fill in here. This is principal plus the interest is the same thing as PRT, okay? So that's where this formula is coming from, okay? This formula, where it comes from, like I said, it's the same thing as this. Okay, I'm going to go over here on this side, okay? So we just saw that A, this guy tells us that A is equal to the principal plus the interest. That's what this is saying, okay? And how they get this version of the formula, if you notice on the right side, both of these pieces contain a P. So what is done here is that they factor out a P, okay? And then you write what's left. So this would be 1 plus RT, okay? If you multiplied this back out, watch what you get. P times 1 is P, and then plus P times RT. So it's equivalent to that. So that's where this guy is coming from, by just taking this other formula and factoring a P out of the right side. Okay?